history and history writing can be problematic, obviously. Not only do you have to be concerned with the facts of the matter as they stand, but also, at least to some extent, adopting a methodology which um, you can sort of fit your facts in. And this has been a perennial problem in the science, such as it is. Perhaps science is the right word, but the pursuit of historiography. And this is one of those books that talks about one of those problems and offers a solution. Um, the book is called Freud for Historians. And it's written by a man who's a historian himself by the name of Peter Gay, who's been, I believe, at Yale for quite some time. This is actually the third book in a trilogy that that discusses ideas of methodology and related subjects. The first one is called Style and History, came out in 1974, and the second one was Art and Act, which came out in 1976. And both of these used some unchallenged assumptions in the field, and therefore he wrote this third book in order to explain the basis for some of his historical methodology. Gay is often what's referred to as a psychohistorian. That is, a historian whose work is consciously focused by the work of Sigmund Freud, specifically his psychoanalytical work. He has quite rightly perceived Freud to be under attack from many corners and academic corners, especially historians. And he uses this book to explain how Freud can shed some light on the historical experience and human psychological understanding when used cautiously and appropriately. Gay notes that historians have had a curious aversion toward psychohistory, and he makes a strong case that besides just a simple recounting of events, historians, as I said, need a way to discuss the motivations and passions and desires and needs of historical actors. So where should you look for a model? While historians have been reluctant to appropriate Freud for various reasons, this, he argues, is far from their only problem. Even some of the most accomplished historians have also misunderstood, deliberately distorted, or even lied about him in their own work, whether willfully or not. Gay says this: what psychoanalysis can bring to the assessment of past experiences is a set of discoveries and a method, fallible, incompletely tested, difficult to apply, yet I am persuaded the best we now have to register the broken surfaces and sound the unplumbed depths of human nature. Now, probably disagree with that personally. I'll speak to the fact of how much I disagree with it or agree with it at the end of this review, but that certainly is a controversial claim, and I'm sure a claim that most historians would not agree with. Gay concedes that many of the problems might be rooted in Freud's reputation as a monolithic and reductive determinist, a kind of biology is destiny type of thinker, who leaves no room for the complexities of class or culture or other variables in people's historically conditioned lives. But he makes a tight and compelling case that a sophisticated reading of Freud mitigates against these assumptions. And furthermore, psychoanalysis was never meant to be handed down by the founding father, Freud, as a set of unassailable dictates. Instead, while Freudian drives are seen by critics as being the sole factors of influence, all historians import a psychology into their work to describe what Gay calls persistent human wishes, gratifications, and frustrations. While Freud can be used as a valuable heuristic, this by no means lessens the capacity for culture and other environmental factors to affect human agency. Gay might be best known for his 5-volume history called The Bourgeois Experience from Victoria to Freud, which covers roughly the century as from Queen Victoria's coming to the throne in 1837 to Freud's death almost exactly 100 years later. And I read Volume 1 several years ago, and I think it was called The Cultivation of Hatred. And I sort of found it an odd experience because I didn't know, first of all, I wasn't aware of this book or the other 2 books in this trilogy. And it was a little bit of a jarring reading experience, reading history that was so explicitly informed by Freud and by psychoanalysis. And I remember thinking a little bit odd, and certainly a kind of history with which I was completely unfamiliar. The Freudianism seemed out of place, and I felt a little embarrassed for Gay for importing such stuff into his work that didn't seem to be there. Reading this really sort of makes more sense of it, and sort of puts the arc of his life's work makes much more sense after having read it. If someone were to ask me what I think of Freud, my response may very well be a function of the time and day and my mood. But he does make a very moderate, reasoned, and reasonable case for the incorporation of Freud into historiographic method in this book. Gay's a really smart guy. He's got a capacious intellect, and he refuses to grow complacent within his chosen tradition. And the book had me constantly, sort of rooting him on while I was reading it, even though I didn't necessarily agree with what he was saying. So, his is a model for cultural and intellectual work, and this is a fine apologia for those interested in opening up new historical vistas and byways. So, there you go. Freud for Historians by Peter Gay.